welcome to the Inside Scoop. We are live from Nashville, Tennessee. Today is Monday, April 28th, and I am your host, Josh Newberg. I am excited about this one. We got a big show today, but before we get going, guys, do me a favor and hit subscribe to the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube, the On3 Recruits channel. Jump on board, hit subscribe for me. All right. Today, we got a lot to talk about because Oregon hosted the number one recruit in the country, and it'll likely be his last visit before he makes his decision in about 2 weeks. We're also going to talk Texas Longhorns and LSU. They have the number one class in America, but they also had the number one class in America this time last year. But there's a reason why I think the Tigers have a chance to hold on. We're going to talk all about it. It's a big show. Let's get to it. Let's talk some Oregon recruiting, one of the most important visits of maybe the entire cycle. Just wrapped up with the Ducks. Number one overall, Jackson Cantwell is on campus. It'll be his last time on campus before his decision. Probably won't be the last time he sees the Oregon coaching staff. Justin, what are the vibes? What are the vibes on Jackson Cantwell in Oregon?
Yeah, I mean, obviously for Oregon, getting him back on campus was big because originally we thought a decision was coming and that was it. Didn't look good for Oregon if that was the case. So you get him on campus and you make your pitch. They were able to center it around a spring game, which is great, right? Not everybody's having a spring game anymore. There was probably 30,000 plus people in Autzen Stadium, so we got a great game day environment at Oregon. Got to see the coaches actually coach a game, if you will, and see how they interacted there. Vibes were incredibly well. The Ducks were also fortunate that Thursday night was the first night of the NFL draft, as we know, and they had one of the offensive tackles, Josh Connerly, that they recruited and developed, get drafted in the first round. So I think if you're Dan Lanning, you really couldn't ask for much more. The weather wasn't as nice as this in Eugene, but he got cooperation from the weather gods, and it was a pretty good day Saturday. So vibes are good. Vibes are strong.
Yeah. I mean, the vibes are strong where you're at. I saw you say it was a great environment out there. Well, it's also a great environment where you're at. So let's talk about this spring game because Brandon Arrington left, the number one corner in America, and said it was one of the best spring games he's ever attended. Brandon Arrington also, he's been known to love some of the visits he's been on. What do you take from this, and where do you think Arrington and Oregon stand?
Yeah, I think Oregon probably prior to this visit was not the team to beat. I think they were among that top three, and Arrington's done a good job kind of keeping things close to the vest. I think we know that USC is in there, Bama is in there, Oregon's in there, maybe some others, but he hasn't really put out a leader or done anything like that. And I think right now, kind of coming off the vibes and the semi-cryptic tweet that he had this morning is that, Oregon probably did enough to put themselves in a really good spot there. It's tough for me to say that the Ducks lead, but I do know that Arrington, giving his track background and his length as a defensive back, is somebody Oregon has prioritized. So the Ducks need DBs in this class, and picking up Arrington would be a real big one. I think the Ducks are now probably the team to beat coming out of this visit. Now we just got to see if Arrington has felt like somebody that's wanted to maybe take more time in his recruitment. So we'll see if that element alone there has changed. And if so, I got to think that's a good thing for the Ducks.
Yeah, looking up Brandon Arrington's tweet right now. So this morning, he put out a tweet that says, something special coming soon with an alarm clock. Need you guys in the comment section to do the science on this tweet, but I think it means that he's getting close to a decision date. Is that how you read it?
That's what I think. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's much of a reason to put out a top group at this point. I think, for the most part, that's been handled. So I think if it's Arrington, that would seem to indicate the next thing. But you and I both know you never know in today's recruiting. We're announcing announcements and doing all kinds of wild stuff. So I guess we'll have to see what Hayes Fawcett has in store for this one.
Yeah, we will. But you guys let me know what you all think it could be. All right, so top 50 edge Richard Wesley. We've talked a lot about him. He's one of these reclassifications that has just been rising up the ranks, a hot recruitment, and coming out of this weekend, he's now trending to the Ducks. Why? Because Steve Wiltfong, On3 national analyst, just put a pick in for Oregon. What are you hearing on Richard Wesley, and what type of priority has Oregon made him?
Oregon prioritized him early, and, I think USC did as well. And I'm hearing that, Oregon's kind of trending and USC has been trending away for the last little bit. I'm certain that this visit didn't do anything to hurt Oregon's chances there. Mm-hmm. Like the pick from Steve Wiltfong, the Ducks obviously losing Tom Tamohini Tupoi flipping to USC. They're going to need to fill that spot, that defensive line spot. We know Dan Lanning prioritizes that every cycle. So, Richard Wesley, once he reclassified, became a 2026 recruit. Clearly he's moved up his recruitment. Wouldn't surprise, I like the pick, but it wouldn't surprise me if this young man probably takes some official visits still. I don't know that we're on, commit watch here for Wesley. But if you're Oregon, obviously you just, you stay where you're at and get him back on campus in June for an official visit. And hopefully the Ducks can hang on, because that would be a really, really big and needed win for Dan Lanning and the Ducks here on the recruiting trail.
Yeah. And, I know it's been a bit of a dry April in terms of commitments for Oregon, but I know some Oregon fans are concerned about recruiting right now, but if you look at the totality and what's on the board, these are all big-time names. And these guys just aren't coming off the board because Oregon fans feel like they need a commitment. They're going to come off the board when they want to come off the board, and they've all got their commitment dates set down the road. And we got one big one coming up a week from today. Jared Curtis, the number one quarterback in America, will make his decision. The visits are over for him, except for in-home visits. Both Georgia and Oregon have one last shot to go in-home, meet with him and the family before that big May 5th decision. What is Oregon when they're in-home? What does their message to Jared need to be?
Yeah, I think you're going to look at the production from this offense, whether it was under Kenny Dillingham or under Will Stein. Obviously Bo Nix, had a lot of success in this system. Dylan Gabriel, who was ultimately drafted in this last NFL draft this weekend. I think you're going to sell that to the quarterback. Say, hey, we're producing guys, we're running a great offense. It translates well into the NFL, and all those things really stack up. I know he feels like there's a lot of offensive playmakers that would be around him at Oregon. I genuinely feel like Jared Curtis loves Oregon, loves everything about Oregon, absolutely everything, other than the fact that it's 2,500 miles from home. Right. And, you can't move Eugene closer to Nashville, and that's just the way it goes. But so, to me, that's been the biggest hurdle. I think Oregon's done everything well there. We originally thought that maybe Jackson Cantwell was going to be making his decision before Jared Curtis. Obviously, he's moved that back, so you thought maybe that might have some impact. Now it's going to look flip-flop. Will Jared Curtis's decision have some impact on Jackson Cantwell, who decides about a week later? Ultimately, we're kind of thinking it's Oregon or Georgia for both of them. So this Jared Curtis could be a massive swing, not only getting Curtis, but also helping your chances to land Cantwell after his commitment about a week later.
All right, Oregon fans, talk to us. What does it all mean for Jared Curtis? And if the Ducks are able to land Curtis, do you guys think Oregon is officially in the running for the number one class in America? Let us know. Comment section below. Let's talk a little Texas Longhorn recruiting. One last big visit weekend there in Austin, and the Horns took a big swing at the number 3 running back in America, Derek Cooper. Justin Wells of Inside Texas coming into the visit. Probably it's fair to say that he's a long shot, right? But coming out of the visit, how are you feeling about Cooper in Texas?
A lot better. They moved the needle this weekend. So Tashard Choice had been trying to get Derek Cooper to Austin for a while, at least over a year, and it just never manufactured. Then Chad Scott pops in. They start a relationship the last few weeks, talks to the parents. Friday, Derek Cooper's in the house on 3 industry ranking number 3 tailback. Look, I think this is a good thing because, Chad Scott's got a clean slate here. And I think that was exactly what Cooper wanted. They wanted to see if Austin could be a school that can be in that final list, that could, potentially get an official visit. And that's exactly what happened. He actually canceled his Penn State official visit on the trip. Now, he doesn't have a date yet. That's to be determined. They're working that out right now. But he's going to take an official to Austin. And to us, that was the biggest takeaway. Were they going to be able to get him back on campus? At this point, it was hard to get them to leave. They were there for 2.5 days. Saturday evening, Cooper's parents got to hang out with Chad Scott and Sark and those guys while Cooper went and hung out with Trey Wisner and some of the other players. And when that happens, that's usually bodes well for the school. And so Derek Cooper was blown away. I think he sees the tradition, and obviously they watched the NFL draft. And I think the Horns have had a running back picked in the last 4 or 5 consecutive drafts. It's become an assembly line at a lot of positions. And so they move the needle. They're going to get him back on campus for an official visit. This thing is wide open. Texas loves KJ Edwards. If they could pair him with a Derek Cooper, guys, that's one heck of a 2026 haul.
All right. Vodney Cleveland, he's 6'2.5", 300 pounds from the state of Alabama. Seemed like a similar recruitment to Derek Cooper. Ever since his decommitment from Alabama, this recruitment's really wide open. Maybe you could say Florida has an edge here, but I don't think anybody really has an edge here. So what do you make of where the Longhorns stand coming out of this one? Is Vodney Cleveland a priority moving forward?
Vodney Cleveland has been a priority since January when Kenny Baker went to go see him at Parker High in Birmingham. Now this is a recruitment that we're trying to get a better read on because Vodney's a quiet guy. He doesn't say a whole lot. I feel like I've got a trip to Alabama in my future. Florida is making a great push with a lot of those D linemen in that region. There's another one, Kinder Guerville out of Fort Myers, Florida, was another one that was on campus that's also becoming a priority, that Texas is also trying to push away from Florida, Miami, some of those in-state schools. Vodney Cleveland, that guy, they want 3 or 4 in this class, and I think Jamian Winfield, the USC commit out of Richardson, Texas, and Vodney Cleveland are 1A and 1B on their top big board. Getting Cleveland on campus was big this spring. They already had an official visit. We broke that at Inside Texas last month. He was going to take an OV. I believe it's going to be the June 13th to the 15th. So Texas already got that solidified. This was one of those, let's go watch scrimmage. Let's go watch a practice. Let's go envision ourselves on that defensive line and what they can do. And they saw the defensive line do a tremendous job at defense overall in Saturday's scrimmage final for the spring Fan Fest. Again, we're trying to get a better read on Cleveland because he's a quiet dude. But Texas is just recruiting really, really well in that region, especially with the defensive linemen. Watch his tape. There's some Myron Charles to his game. And so I think we actually posted yesterday at Inside Texas. I think they really solidified their spots with Vodney Cleveland and with Kendall Guerville this weekend, 2 interior defensive linemen. And that way Texas may not have to go for 5 guys in the portal like they did in this spring window. They've been developing guys when you've got an Alex January who's going to be starting this year. You've got Justice Terry and Myron Charles and Josiah Sharma as freshmen early enrollees. Terry already making an impact. This is just doubling down on the 2026 guys. Vodney Cleveland, they solidified that foundation. He'll be back. And Kendall Guerville is another one. Texas, he called Texas his leader at this point, and he was leaning Florida for the longest. So I think the Horns and Kenny Baker is really starting to cook.
All right. So we know it wasn't the biggest recruiting weekend of the spring, but there were some important names on campus. Who else do Texas fans need to know about coming out of this weekend?
I'll tell you 2 more guys that are really important that I think Texas really nailed it with their recruitments. Jaraylin McCoy. He's an edge defensive lineman out of Tupelo, Mississippi. Longhorn fans are already endearing themselves to this guy because 3 months ago, they weren't even on the radar. Then he replaces his official visit to Texas A&M with Texas and puts Texas in his top final schools. And so already Texas fans like this guy. I got to hang out with him a little bit Saturday afternoon. He is every bit of 6'6". He's kind of like a Lance Jackson starter kit. Maybe not as refined, but man, he looks fantastic. Getting to watch Colin Simmons and Trey Moore go to work in the scrimmage really made an impression on him. And again, McCoy is one that, if you look at the fact patterns, a lot of this is starting to kind of trend Texas. He came away this weekend feeling like a priority. When Texas and their staff does that, that's how they sign the number 1 class in 2025. That's how they built up all this momentum with the last 3 or 4 classes. It's because they let the important guys know just how important they are. Jaraylin McCoy, this was a huge thing because they're gonna have to battle Georgia, they're gonna have to battle Alabama, they're gonna have to battle in-state Ole Miss. LSU is trying to get into the mix. That one's gonna be a tough recruitment, but that could be a big recruitment. The other player is Jermaine Bishop, one of the best athletes in the country, bar none. One of the most dynamic in the state of Texas. Plays offense, plays defense, plays special teams, mows the yard, will cut the grass, will weed eat. He does it all. And Bishop is special. He's cousins with Michael Bishop, the former Kansas State phenomenal quarterback, played in the NFL for a minute. Now he's coaching down in Houston, in high school in Houston. Look, Jermaine Bishop became popular because he was catching all of DJ Lagway's touchdowns, essentially. That's how he got on the map. And then people figured out this guy is a freak on the track and on the football field. Texas loves him. at DB. They think he could be an elite corner. They're also kind of recruiting him in the athlete category. You know, Chris Jackson, the wide receiver coach, has been involved in this recruitment. Mark Orfe is actually going to go see him in 3 days down in Willis, Texas. And to me, that's a big development because there was a transition period when Terry Joseph and Blake Gideon left, and Bishop didn't really know exactly what was going on. Chris Jackson picked up the slack. He picked it up because you never know where these guys could, project once they get on campus. And I've seen Bishop enough on offense to know you wouldn't go wrong. He's kind of got a Terry Bussey like game to him and personality as well. Texas killed this one, man. They knocked out of the park. The parents were so happy. I think A&M is a school to watch. I think Houston, actually, the in-state Houston Cougars are actually a school to watch as well. But I'm starting to see Texas separate from the pack in this one, especially if he's so bought into playing corner, which I think he would be phenomenal at that spot. Kind of gives me a Deion Beasley vibe, on the island. And so, if there are two guys that I think came out of this weekend would be Jaraylon, in addition to the ones we talked about, sure. Jaraylon McCoy and Jermaine Bishop. Texas did a lot of good there.
All right, let's turn the page on the weekend because the spring eval period is here, which means Texas coaches are on the road. Where are they expected to be this week? Any important targets getting visits?
All of them. All those important targets. You're a priority when you hit campus on Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
And then they come see you 3 days later. That's a tell.
That's a power.
That means they really, really like you. There's a handful of guys. We've got a brand new list at InsideTexas.com, but I'm gonna give you guys some of that inside scoop that Newberg loves. Texas is going to see Jalen Lott in the next few days. That's a big recruitment. Listen, Oregon has really solidified themselves in that recruitment, and this was another where Terry Joseph and Blake Gideon leaving left kind of a gap in that recruitment. So I know Chris Jackson had been a little bit more involved, even though they do, like Bishop, see him at corner. I think he's important. They're going to go see Jermaine Bishop again. They're going to go see Chase Calicut, big safety out of North Shore down there. That's Orfe's stomping grounds. That's where he played and coached. I think that's kind of a big development as well. Texas is going to go see Myson Johnson Cook today. That's the big 2027 super athlete. I think he's the number one rated athlete, if I remember correctly, 6'3", 220. One's like a 10'4", 10'5 on the track. I mean, ridiculous tools and intangibles. He just picked up a Texas offer last week, but they don't know what position he is. Running back, wide receiver, tight end. They're not sure. They're going to see him today to figure that out at DeSoto High School. They're also going to see guys like Booby Feaster this week, Caden Finley out of Aledo. They want to make sure they see Tay Ellis. They want to make sure they see Trenton Yancey. Don't be surprised if they pop in on some 27s in a couple days. Landon Williams Callis, Richmond Randall, one of the best talents in the entire country. They just won the state championship. He plays bigger than he is. They're going to see Jacoby Dixon, one of my favorite tailbacks out of Brenham for 2027. A few more DBs out of state. Samari Matthews. He is a major priority. He was on campus 2 or 3 weeks ago. They could not have done any better. I think it's Texas and the field there. I believe I even put in an RPM for him because it felt so good coming off that visit. Josh Dobson, another one that was on campus this last weekend. They're going to make sure and go see him again on Friday. They want to connect with his coaches and do a little bit more digging on him as well. So coaches on the road, and we are updating that constantly. So if it's not here with Josh on the Inside Scoop, come see us at InsideTexas.com.
Yeah, you guys are absolutely killing it. Justin was on the phone, taking calls, writing scoop as we went to tape. So go check out Inside Texas. Justin Wells, appreciate you dropping by the Inside Scoop. Let's talk some LSU recruiting. Got Shea Dixon here from the Bengal Tiger. Last year at this time, LSU had the number one class in America. This year at this time, they have the number one class in America. I want to know, are they going to be able to hold it? But first, I got to talk a little transfer portal with you. Shea, what was the most important transfer portal addition this offseason for LSU?
Josh, I'm looking right now at the list of guys they've gotten, and Brian Kelly said it would be a calm or quiet, he said, spring window. He was right. They only had one guy leave that was a scholarship guy. He was a freshman that had just signed, Dylan Battle, a 3-star at Texas. And remember, Bo Davis signed him. Bo Davis is now the D-line coach for the Saints. So position shakeup there and staff shakeup. But they added a DT, Bernard Gooden out of USF by way of Wake. But he had been arguably, I guess at this point, the best DT that's available, and they made quick work. Miami, others wanted visits. But I still look around like DT, Josh was in need for him. They got him. Wide receiver, they needed to add some guys like Nick Anderson, a former top 100 guy. Barian Brown is probably the biggest standout there. And I think maybe some people's answer coming out of Nashville as a top 100 kid, played at Kentucky, tons of production. They really needed DB help. So safety, Tamarcus Cooley. NC State had a really good corner and safety room. Everybody transferred. He was probably their best. But my answer will be Mansour Delaney. And I think coming out of Virginia Tech, just when you think, Josh, a lot of guys postseason, they get shoulders cleaned up, whatever it might be. They're out for spring. He's not been injured. He practiced every single one of the 15 practices LSU had, did a little cross training, but he's going to play corner. He's got 30-something starts. He's got 150-something career tackles. And for Corey Raymond, I think day one, DJ Pickett's going to start, but it still buys him a little bit of time there, right? And he also, Corey Raymond, transferred in Jakeem Jackson, who he signed at Florida. Jakeem Jackson was the number 3 cornerback on 2 years ago. He got banged up to start the year, and then he sat it out to redshirt and transfer, but you still don't know, is he going to be ready right away? So I just feel like, and look behind them, you've got the guys they had to play last year as true freshmen, PJ Woodland, Stamps, and those guys were learning on the run. So to rebuild DBU, if you will, I think they've got to be strong at corner, and obviously Pickett's a great signee, and I think starts, but I think Cooley is going to be the vet there that maybe goes one-on-one, certainly early on with whoever's best receiver is on the other side.
You got me fired up about this defense. LSU fans, do me a favor.
I said Cooley, Josh. Delaney. I meant Delaney.
All right.
When you take 17 transfers, you mix them up.
But LSU fans, jump on board, hit subscribe for me. And Shay, last year, number 1 class in America. This year, still the number 1 class in America. But there's been a lot that's gone on in the last year. How do you think, not just the fan base, but the coaching staff as well, is handling this recruiting cycle?
I think, well, gosh, Josh, last year when we talked about this being the number 1 class, it was Underwood, it was DeCorian Moore. And this time when we talk about number 1 class, it's built on all Louisiana guys, largely, and then one kid from a border state who have, 5-star number 1 overall player at his position, Tristan Keys, who I'm sure we'll dive into here shortly. But it feels like a little bit more stable, right? Like holding on to Underwood, holding on to DeCorian Moore when he was making visits while he was committed, and being an out-of-state kid just seemed like, man, LSU's got to really kind of hold on tight here. Obviously, Moore flipped on him, and then so did Underwood. But still signed a good class, top 5 class, held on to DJ Pickett and others. But I think this year, Josh, number 1, tough to do. But if you can finish top 5 again and lock down Louisiana, that's all LSU wants to do.
All right, well, let's take a look at that path to a number 1, maybe top 3. But let's focus on a number 1 class in America. And I have a feeling that if LSU can take care of business in the trenches and really hit it out of the park, I think that keeps them on pace for that number 1 class. And if we're looking at top targets, it starts with offensive tackle Emmanuel Iheanacho, and also the number 1 player in the state of Louisiana, Lamar Brown, maybe more of an interior guy. But where do Iheanacho and Brown sit with the LSU Tigers right now?
Yeah, and Lamar Brown has gone back and forth. Now he's saying he wants to play D-line. So he debuted as our number 1 athlete now when he moved over from the O-line rankings. He can play either way. He could play D-line or play O-line. I think he's going to play D-line. That's where he's been talking to LSU and A&M the most about right now. I mean, whether that's end or DT, we'll see. But he's a phenomenal athlete. And on 3, he's number 1 athlete. But on Iheanacho, I think that, Josh, you look at Will Campbell got drafted this past weekend, right? That in the top 5, number 4 overall, going to the Patriots. 3 and out, started every game at left tackle. Iheanacho obviously can be sold on that type of pitch. I do think that Steve Wiltfong spot on here that locally, Maryland, who's already got a 5-star committed, is trying to get another. And Iheanacho as a team to watch. And then coming off of an Oregon visit, it seems that Dan Lanning and the Ducks are very involved here, if not one of the kind of 1B to Maryland. But LSU, Bama, Auburn, A&M, I mean, there are a lot of SEC schools trying to get in the mix. I'll give you just a little behind the scenes quickly. I was at the Nike event at the Super Bowl where the 32 teams were rep by 32 kids, and he was there for the Commanders. And when I interviewed him, he was still thinking about what was going to be like a fifth or sixth OV. And there were like 5 schools in the mix, and LSU was one of them. So like that's how far back they were then. And they've made up ground really rapidly. They got a visit out of him. Now they locked in an OV. Now they've made his lead group. So did they get him? I don't know. But if you want to talk about a path to a number 1 class, you land a guy like that, number 2 overall player in the country. I think that will obviously boost you in a big way. So they went from off the radar here to definitely in the conversation.
Yeah, and you're right. Lamar Brown is now the number 1 athlete in America at 6'3.5", 285 pounds. My man is listed as an athlete. I love that. A couple months ago, Brandon Arrington, who's about 6'2.5", 180 pounds, was the number 1 athlete. Now Lamar Brown is our number 1 athlete. So who's the biggest competition here? Inside Scoop listeners, I got to tell you about a company that makes this show possible. It's Rhoback Activewear. The only way to describe Rhoback is best fit, best feel. And for those who are not familiar with Rhoback, they are completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. Rhoback has released so many items within their new licensed game day collection, and it's our favorite. With novel polo designs, clean hoodie, and quarter zip designs from some of your favorite schools, it's definitely worth checking out. Nobody else in the market is pairing these level of custom designs with this quality of activewear. Rhoback's everyday shorts or their Delta Performance pants are the perfect pairing as well. They are both super comfortable. They have an elastic waistband and a great fabric that is made to have the appearance of a nice short look, but the comfort for everyday movement. Rhoback also has been proudly leading the NIL charge, having signed partnerships with multiple college football stars, past and present, and are becoming the go-to brand for college athletes across the country. So use code JOSH on Rhoback.com for a generous 20% off all new custom orders through the end of this week. Let's spell it out for you. RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more with promo code JOSH.
It's A&M. There's no doubt about it. And it's funny because Texas became, when they entered the SEC, Josh, they got that playing card, right? They got that. That was a thing that everybody could say in the SEC of, hey, yeah, you could go to Texas or you could come here and play in the SEC. Mm-hmm. Well, now you can't do that. And LSU went head-to-head with Texas hard these past 2 cycles. Now it's shifted back to A&M a little bit, right? And it's a very geographic thing. It's 4-hour drive from Baton Rouge. So if Louisiana kids get recruited, East Texas kids get recruited to both programs. And he has visited both a ton. And look, Southern Cal, other teams are getting visits. But I think this boils down to LSU and A&M. And my On3 RPM has been on LSU. I'll keep it there. I kind of like LSU's chances for him more because he is waiting. People, I know you know this, Josh, but he goes to U High. That's on LSU's campus. Like where he plays his Friday night games is literally backed up to LSU's practice facility and where they practice every day. So it's one of those things where these kids get out and experience something new. And it's like, oh, do I want to go to college the exact same place I went to high school? It's literally on the same campus. So I don't think LSU wanted Lamar Brown to shut it down in 10th grade or something like that, right? Like go take your visits, take your OV, see it all, then make a decision. And I think it's boiling down now to, hey, look, I'd like to stay close to home, and these are my 2 best options.
Right. All right, let's talk about the quarterback position. We've been talking about this for a couple weeks on this show. What is LSU going to do at the quarterback position? Is the top target still Bo Bentley?
He is. And look, Joe Sloan, he's paid a lot of money to be the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. So he's kind of planned for situations like what happens if Bryce Underwood doesn't come to LSU, right? And he flipped in the 11th hour. That doesn't give you a lot of wiggle room. Yeah. So it became a transfer. Michael Van Buren from State, who stepped in and started double-digit games as a true freshman. But pivoting to a top 5 quarterback in the next class wasn't something many people would have had on the bingo card, right? Like who's going to, as a top 5 quarterback, follow Underwood? Well, when Underwood flipped to Michigan, the doors sort of swung open, and whether it was Diabell or you name it, out of kind of that group of top 5, they were already on him. But Bo Bentley's the one who's remained uncommitted, and Oklahoma was viewed as a favorite. LSU got a visit, then they locked in an OV, and now Georgia. Those are his final 3. So LSU's got a good relationship with him. Sloan's building on that. I think the visit for him and his dad here was big, Josh, in March. And we'll see. Look, OU and Georgia both recruit quarterbacks very well, but we're old enough to not realize how the youth think that these kids who are about Bo Bentley's age probably started following football closely around 2018, 2019. And LSU's turning out Joe Burrow and then Jaden Daniels and Nussmeier. And during the Les Miles era, that wasn't always the case. So LSU is kind of viewed as the quarterback factory right now after a couple of Heisman winners who went on to have great success in the NFL. So I am not counting out LSU here, even more so for a Texas kid. It's not like this is a kid out of California or something. It's a guy who's local, and LSU and Oklahoma are the two closest schools to him.
All right. So holding on to that number one class, it's imperative that they land some of these names that we just talked about, but it's also imperative that they hold on to what they got, namely Tristan Keys, the number one wide receiver in America. He's from the state of Mississippi. We know some crazy things go down in the SIP as we get closer to National Signing Day. Do you see any reason to worry about Tristan Keys?
The worry meter is always there when you've got a 5-star wide receiver that's number one committed. I think LSU fans quickly go to DeCorian Moore, right? Because that was last cycle.
Sure.
He was the number one receiver. He was a 5-star. He committed early.
He was out of state.
And then he makes visits. He's a border state kid, and then he flips on you. And everyone says, well, is this going to happen again? I've got some insight here.
Tell him
Josh.
it's not going to happen, Shay.
Well, Tristan Keys is a Hattiesburg High rising senior. I graduated from Hattiesburg High. I won't say which class. I don't want to age myself. But Hattiesburg's about a 2-hour, 15-minute drive, Josh, 2.5. That's less than it is to get to Oxford, to get to Starkville, to get to Tuscaloosa. LSU is the closest school to him. So even geographically speaking, that's the close school. The in-state schools are a little bit further of a drive. Not much, but you kind of get the picture there. He's been around here since about 8th grade, and there's a reason why. Donovan Tate, who is also a Hattiesburg High grad, is LSU's director of recruiting, and they've been hot and heavy in the Pine Belt the past couple cycles. They signed P.J. Woodland out of Oak Grove at corner, a 4-star. They signed this past cycle Tyler Miller out of Laurel, a 4-star. And look, both those guys, I think, were recruited. I know one of them was committed to an in-state school, but heavily by Ole Miss and State. They stay at LSU. They didn't hit the portal, so they're going to be on the team when Tristan Keys signs. And I just think between the connections they have at Hattiesburg, how long he's been around, the kind of relationship with his family that dates back many, many years here, makes it so much different than DeCorian. I actually think right now, if you were to just make me pick, I think he sticks because whether it's development, NIL, geographic location, fit, all of that, it's there for him. Like LSU's already had all those discussions. That's why he committed. Is he going to make visits? Yeah, he's made a bunch of visits that he already had planned, and he's also probably going to make some official visits. But that's just the lay of the land these days. I think that this is still one that they've had enough conversations and backstory here of knowledge of the situation to where not much will happen that they don't know about in terms of Tristan visiting schools and stuff like that. So mark me down, Josh. What is it? April 28th. I'll say he stays committed and signs in December.
All right. Let us know. Do you guys agree with Shay? Do you believe that LSU will finish with the number one class in America? Let us know. Comment section below. Let's talk some Oregon Ducks transfer portal, and do not adjust your YouTube set. I have JD Piquel of the On3 channel on the On3 Recruits channel right now because we're talking transfer portal. And as always, the transfer portal is brought to you by Teamworks Intelligence. Every player, every metric, every advantage. All right. Oregon made it very close to where the Duck fans want them to be every year, but they didn't make it as far. They didn't make it to the championship. So we saw Oregon get very active in the transfer portal. What do you think of what Dan Lanning did in the portal this cycle?
Well, to hit on the first point you made there, Oregon just unfortunately with how the playoff seeding is ran into the buzzsaw that is Ohio State. But it is what it is. But if you're talking about the Oregon portal haul, Josh, talk about the trenches, man. I go back to Dan Lanning's first game at Oregon. They're playing in Atlanta. They got Kirby Smart in Georgia. Yeah. And Kirby Smart, after an absolute thwacking of the Ducks, takes the podium and says, "We beat Oregon today because we have better players." reading between the lines here, I think he was speaking to what they have in the trenches. That's not going to be the case here going forward under Dan Lanning.
Yeah.
Went to the portal, got Emmanuel Pregnon from USC, high-profile offensive lineman. Went and got Bear Alexander, who at one point in time was actually at Georgia. Now was at USC previously. Now he's at Oregon. They've made a concerted effort to get those big human beings up front to go win the line of scrimmage. And Josh, we know big people move small people, and that's always going to be the case. College football changes schematically, and there's different things with the portal and NIL, but the trenches, those will not change. And Dan Lanning clearly making that a priority here for the future via the portal.
Yeah, recruiting really well. Well, whether it be the high school level, the portal level, whatever it is, they are recruiting. All right, we're still going to stay on the transfer portal, but I want to know, what are you hearing about Dante Moore? I know he wasn't in the portal this cycle. He was in the portal last cycle, but Dante Moore expected to be the starter in Eugene. What are the expectations for him? What type of season do you think he can have?
I mean, the bar's been set pretty high at Oregon.
Yeah.
You got to be a Heisman finalist, right? It's absolutely an unfair thing to say. And if you're an Oregon fan, even expecting that of a first-year starting quarterback at your news, I mean, I started at UCLA a little bit, but to be the guy at Oregon feels like kind of heavy expectations. But you look at the way the system's built; they're not going to ask him to make all these NFL caliber throws or be able to throw the deep out from the other hash. Get the ball to playmakers, be on time, be on schedule, know what you're looking at, play fast. And these dudes that we brought in to Eugene are track speed fast. We're going to be able to pick up chunk plays. You should do good numbers like Good Will Hunting.
Yeah, is that that's where we're at with Oregon. It's plug and play at the quarterback position because, we asked this question about some other teams, but with Oregon, there's no question. They have the weapons around to make anybody that's, I don't want to say Dante Moore's average, but you can go in and have average type play but still put up huge numbers at Oregon. Do you see this roster fitting Dante Moore's skill set?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I love so much, too, the fact that he got a full year to see it done. We should see the dividends now of not just one spring, but 2 springs. Mm-hmm. And credit Dante Moore for having the maturity to say, I'm not ready yet. You just sit for a year, go watch one of the most experienced players in college football, and Dylan Gabriel do it at a Heisman finalist caliber level a season ago. We should be able to hit the ground running because it's not going to be his first time seeing it done, if that makes sense.
He's got a big advantage there. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of Joey Aguilar is going to be at Tennessee with maybe the season in his hands, only having August to prepare.
Getting his student ID one day and picking up his equipment the next day. And it's like, hey, Joey, welcome to Knoxville, baby. Here's what you should eat. Games tomorrow.
Yeah. So Oregon fans got to feel really good about their situation. You got to feel good about the pieces that they put around Dante Moore. So Oregon fans, talk to JD and I. What are your expectations for this season? They got to be high.